Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Swish Theory NBA Draft Podcast. I'm Will Morris, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Matt Powers of the Swish Theory as well.
Yeah.
Matt, how you doing today?
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Love what you've done with the pod so far in just a few episodes here.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Matt is a total draft expert. Has been someone that I've been in touch with on Twitter for kind of my duration of doing the scouting and whatnot. And Matt has put a ton of work into the Swish Theory draft board that just dropped a couple days ago as we're recording this, which looks absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, kudos to you for your work on that board. It looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely happy how it came out. I like the with the interactive sliders. It was like a kind of a fun new thing. If you're listening and haven't checked it out, you can like query and like filter players based on six different traits, like advantage creator or rim protector. So you can just filter out only the best rim protectors and like sort by advantage extender or stuff like that, or like on ball defense. So it's kind of a way to build like your own like team's wish list or just like find players that you think might be interesting that you didn't know about. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I've definitely been playing with it a lot since it dropped. And I think it's fun to do exactly as you said, just like imagine the team's fit, what they need. Oh, they need a guy that can space the floor that also protects the rim. Let's toggle those sliders up, see who pops up. Um, there's definitely a lot of cool experimentation going on. So Swish Theory pushing the boundaries once again.
And more to
Uh,
come. So
yeah, it looks fantastic. So if you haven't checked it out already, do yourself a favor, go to the Swish Theory, check out the draft board. It looks great. So today we're going to cover some guards, and interestingly enough, the three players we're going to talk about today find themselves at 12, 13, and 14 on the Swish consensus board. I reached out to Matt to do this show before any of that was created, just because I think they're three sort of interesting guys to compare. Had no idea that they were all going to end up back to back to back on the board. And it kind of works out perfectly because, yeah, they're 12, 13, 14. They're all right next to each other. They're all generally guards. They are in a similar kind of prospect bucket positionally, size wise. Um, I mean, obviously, Kasparas is bigger than Jase, so there is some size gaps there, but overall, you're kind of projecting them into a similar ish sort of guard role. So I think it's fascinating that they all ended up so close based on the consensus board that we've got going on here. So I think with that, we can probably get the ball rolling here. I think we're literally just going to go down the line. So Jeremiah Fears is ranked 12th, Jase is ranked 13th, and Jakucionis is ranked 14th. So why don't we start with Fears? So Matt, why don't you give the listeners just a general breakdown of Fears's game and what kind of his special sauce is as a prospect?
yeah, so Jeremiah Fears is yet to turn 19, so he was a pretty young freshman, 6'2" with a 6'5" wingspan, 180 pounds, super shifty, quick player with, I think I've heard differing opinions on his handle, but I think it's like really crafty and he's very like quick with it and able to kind of go through the mid range and like get to the paint whenever he wants. So he actually led the SEC in usage rate as a freshman, like a full percentage point, I think, above Janai Broom, like second in National Player of the Year talks. He had some troubles with efficiency, especially at the rim, where he shot, I think, yeah, only 53%, but he got there a lot, got into mid-range a lot where he was super efficient, shot 56% mid-range. Is that right?
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's
yeah, he was like blistering there. He was
yeah,
like killer on floaters in particular.
Yeah, Bart has
Um,
him at 45.9%
oh,
on
shoot.
non-rim twos, which is still quite high. And I know there's some discrepancies between Bart and Synergy between what's a rim
Yeah,
and what's not.
gotcha.
So it wouldn't
But yeah,
surprise
and he
me
was
if he's in that 50-ish range on Synergy.
right. And yeah, he was awesome from the line. It's just like the 3-point shot was not there yet. Only 28% from three, but super physical player, like drew a ton of fouls. I think he like I don't know if he led the SEC in fouls, but I ran like a query of like freshmen in the SEC that were able to draw the number of fouls that he did, and it's like only like basically all-star level players. I'll find that query. Um, but he's like pretty, even though he's like pretty small, like 6'2.5" or whatever. He's like pretty broad-shouldered. He's kind of like a wrecking ball. He can like move people off their spot pretty easily. But yeah, every now and then he pulls out some kind of like dribble combination that has like shades of Kyrie to it. But yeah, he's an interesting player. Definitely also it seems like a pretty like intense personality and like very like hard worker from everything I've heard. Um and like in a good way, obviously. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good sort of all encapsulating breakdown. You hit on a lot of points there that I agree with. I think the special juice, as you kind of alluded to, is definitely that downhill creation ability. I think I'm on the same page as you as far as his handle goes. I think for downhill creation, it lends itself really well to changing directions and sort of weaving and bobbing between players, changing speeds while going downhill. I think his handle does look very tight and is conducive to that slashing based creation. He had 2.88 unassisted rim makes per 40 this season, which is quite high. There's definitely guys that have historically been higher. I'm kind of looking at three as like the phenomenal, like elite threshold, like where like Trey Young was there, Oladipo was there, Kyrie was there in like a short sample. Someone like De'Aaron Fox had it like over four unassisted rim makes per 40. Um, but there you still have guys like Jaden Ivey who were in that like just under three range. I think the thing with him is that 2.88 mark even undersells him a little bit just because he misses a lot of shots at the rim. He
Yeah.
gets to the rim as much as any of those elite slashers, name whoever off the top of your head, but he did only shoot 53% at the rim, as you mentioned, which is definitely a worry. He's slight. He's an okay leaper, but it's not like he's one of these super high flyers that's generating tons and tons of half court dunks. But overall, still just a very potent slashing prospect with his ability to get downhill, very physical. I think he had some good moments like playing with pace, putting defenders in jail, and just drawing contact from there. Um, like he'll throw his body into defenders even if he isn't like particularly strong. He's only 180 pounds. Um, but yeah, I think the questions definitely lie with that jumper, right? And I just wonder if you had any like not necessarily just jumper, but like overall scoring concerns.
Yeah.
He only
Yeah.
shot 28.4% from three. And then I mentioned even though he is a great downhill creator, it's not like he's particularly efficient at the rim at this juncture in his career yet. So then it begs the question, okay, if you're not getting those easy rim attempts and you're not hitting your threes, he is pretty good in the mid range right now, but is he good enough that that's going to carry the bulk of his scoring early in his
Right.
career?
No, yeah, I was curious about like the drive leaders in the NBA and to see how they compared to Fears when he was in their pre-draft seasons. So he had 9 dunks, shot 53% at the rim, as we said. And had 119 drives where he scored 0.9 points per possession, which is actually like pretty solid for drives. But all of the top 12 drivers of the NBA, none of them were better than him at every single one of those. So like most people were like Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Trae Young, Cam Thomas, Tyrese Maxey, Devin Booker, Tyler Hero, all none of them got 9 dunks. Like that's pretty impressive for somebody of his size. Like there's some athletic talent there, even if he's like, I think he has finishing issues and that he like takes off too early a lot of times and like tries to get a better, like thinks he's gonna get a better angle that way. He doesn't have like the Ja Morant type like bursts or whatever, obviously. Or like he needs to depend on that mid-range craft. That's why I kind of like him at his best when he is trying to find those like unusual paths to the basket where he's kind of like can buy time for himself by kind of like taking oblique angles and like the defense doesn't really know how to react when you're just like kind of playing in those gaps and like somebody on the defense has to make a decision. But I think his passing I think is like the bigger swing skill because I'm pretty confident on the three, honestly. Like just with the level of free throw and mid-range scoring, I think he struggles to get easy threes, which is like going to be kind of the issue with him is like if he hits, you're going to want him to have the ball in his hands like a lot, right? Or like if you're taking him, you're going to want to have him a high usage player. But if he's a high usage player who also struggles to get like easy threes, also struggles to get like easy rim attempts, or like high degree finishing rim attempts. Um, it's putting a lot of pressure on the mid-range game and it makes you like a lot more predictable. So that's why I think the passing is the more interesting part of his game as far as like can he keep teams honest? Because I think he's a really good like pick and roll passer. Overall his like assist to turnover ratio was only 1.2, which is like pretty low for a primary. But again, like had a crazy high usage rate in a difficult situation. Um, but I don't know if he has that like creative passing within drives, of that like instantaneous like, oh, maybe somebody if I go this way. But he does have like pretty good reactive instincts, I think, when like there's a few plays where he kind of was able to just like slowly kind of like not really Steve Nash it, but like kind of like probe in and out and then like jump in the last second and drop it off to someone below the basket. So he is able to like react to the space that becomes open even if he's not like proactively creating those gaps. But I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think the passing is definitely a huge swing skill here. And to be honest, I was definitely a little bit disappointed. I think a player in his sort of ilk, you kind of wish that they were, um, one of these super, super heady passers. Not to like compare him to like an NBA All Star like Trae Young and say like, oh, he has to be on that level of vision, but to be a good NBA player. But I think they're comparable in that both of them were these really high rim rate guys that Trae obviously significantly better as a shooter, but high rim rate guys that just weren't very efficient at the rim. And I think where Trae had the edge is not only was he able to get by guys, but he was able to just be a really proactive pick and roll passer. There's definitely times with Fears where I feel like he kind of just goes through the motions and is making the reads without kind of thinking about where exactly he can move the chess pieces on defense. So I do wish that there was a little bit more there as like a manipulative passer. I mean, he did have a 28.6% assist rate, which is good in a vacuum, but for a 32% usage rate, it's really nothing particularly special. Um, and then yeah, as far as the turnovers go, there's definitely times where like he'll lose control of his dribble trying to like get into a tight area or something. I think I'm still okay on his handle. I think it lends itself well to the creation style that you're expecting him to have. But um yeah, there's times where he'll lose that dribble and yeah, I think there's just stuff to clean up as a pick and roll passer. I don't think he's that level of processor where it's like, okay, we're going to put the ball in his hands and he's going to get us like 8 assists a game, which again, it's like a high bar to set, but this is someone that could potentially get picked in that high-ish lottery range. Um, and if you're picking someone that high with this sort of skill set, who's a small guard, you're kind of hoping that he's going to be that level of creator and sort of game manager.
I will say I went back and watched some of his like EYBL tape, and he was just like so transition heavy and like not really the one like running like setting the table for the offense as much, like a lot less pick and roll. So I just wonder if, I mean, he's still super young, if like just like it's a reps thing where he'll get more and more used to it as it goes along. And like obviously this was a great experience. I do think he's like very, very good at knowing where his shooters are and where his roller is. Like that court mapping thing, which is like real, that's like so much of the battle, right? Is just knowing, okay, this person's coming in, I can kick that way, right? And you can just like set things up, even if that maybe he doesn't have the stuff that I don't know. I like to project like 75th percentile outcomes, like I'm go more like high risk, high reward. And I'm don't know if in that outcome he ever becomes like a super manipulative passer, but I think he can be a much more disciplined one. Even like, I mean, even though his ATO wasn't too good, I was looking at like when he's on the court, the team assist rate goes up and the turnover rate doesn't change. So like overall, he's like greasing the wheels in some way, even if the like turnover rate on the surface isn't great. So yeah, I think I'm pretty optimistic on the feel, I would say. Um, but yeah, it's also we haven't talked about the defense is another thing that I'm like very uncertain about, honestly. Kind of go back and forth on, but yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a classic example of one of these guards where it's like, oh, they're like a very good athlete. So there's a ceiling there. Like he had a good steal rate. Um, but I just think that the off ball defensive awareness is just not really
Yeah.
there a lot of the time. And it's one of those things where it's hard to really gauge it when he's 18 years old with a 32% usage rate in
Yeah.
an unbelievable league. Like I think someone that we talked about the other day, sort of on the side, was Anthony Edwards. He doesn't have the same tools as Anthony Edwards, but you watch Anthony Edwards' Georgia tape, and it is just riddled with defensive errors and just plays where he's just taking possession after possession after possession off. Um, I don't think Fears is even that level of negative as far as like the off ball awareness goes, but it's just really hard to gauge 18-year-olds playing against really good competition that had crazy offensive usage. So um, yeah, I mean, I'd still lean being low on his defense just based on what I've seen, but there definitely is a ceiling there just based off some of the athletic tools that he has. But again, it's not like he's Ant, right? Like he's a bit under 6'4" in shoes. He's 180 pounds. It's not like he's going to be someone who's super positionally versatile. You're kind of just hoping that he gets to that level where he can defend ones and smaller twos.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the steal rate is like he knows when to like pounce a lot of times, right? He's like can make the right read every now and then and just like get a pick six or whatnot. But um yeah, the like off just the general sense of like where to stand is not great, but yeah, he's completely overtaxed in an offense that is like he's carrying like 80% on his burden. Um but yeah, I don't know. He still got like a decent block rate. Like he got blocks every now and then too, which is like a good like athleticism based like indicator for a guard. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think he could. I agree that there's a ceiling there where he can just like lock in, but there's a complicated question of like Okay, yeah, he is like this high usage now, but again, that's the role that you would want him to play as a super high usage offensive player. So like even in that scenario where the offense hits, is it possible for the defense to hit at all, you know? Or is that just going to be like way overtaxed because he's not that same level of athlete as the other guys we talked about, as like Anthony Edwards and those guys? Um,
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm struggling with him a bit because sort of like you said, if you are banking on some like great defensive development, uh, I think that that matters more if he isn't like a super high level offensive player, which I think just based on some of the finishing concerns and just overall scoring concerns I have, in conjunction with the fact that it's not like he's this like preternatural passer or anything either. I think it puts a little bit more pressure on that defense to be passable as opposed to someone like Trey Young, where he can get away with it a little more just because he's such a mega talent on offense. And even with someone like Trey Young, there's like huge team building constraints on having a player like that who is just bleeding value on the defensive end. And I'm not trying to single out Trey. There's other examples of that too, but um, I think with combining all of that with fears, it becomes a question of okay, where do you draft a player with that sort of skill set where you're hoping he's like maybe you're projecting him 50th percentile as like a very good bench creator, um, and then plays decent enough passable level defense. Is that someone that you're going to invest like a high pick on? Maybe you're higher on the offense, but then the defense I think would come down a little bit too. I think there's just so much to work on here that it's going to be tough for it to all sort of encapsulate. Um, I just think there's too much as far as skill development on both ends that I don't know if I'm comfortable projecting him as like one of these high lottery, mid lottery type bets.
yeah, yeah, I've moved him around a good bit over the cycle. Because like again, I want to be very like pro risk, just like philosophically. Like I think you should take, I mean, from our position, there's no reason why we shouldn't be recommending like
Yeah, yeah,
going for it. Like I don't know. And like because like it's so much more tilted towards the upside if you hit on a player versus the downside missing on a player, right? The downside missing on a player is the player's no longer on the team. And like I mean there's a huge opportunity cost with a player like Fears that you have to consider of like throwing that kind of usage at them that you're then depriving of other players and their developmental reps. So I think that's kind of the key consideration is how comfortable you are committing those resources to him. Because I mean, if you're having him as like just trying to like groom him to be like a six man type player, I think you're kind of like missing the boat. Like I think you should. There's enough there to kind of like, especially at his age, to just like throw him into the deep end and like see what happens. Because like he's able to. The SEC was tough, right? And like super physically demanding. And the fact that he was able to handle that is like super impressive. Yeah, here's my list of players, SEC freshmen who made at least 150 free throws in the freshman season. It was De'Aaron Fox, John Wall, Andrew Harrison, one miss, Ben Simmons, Colin Sexton, Moses Moody, Cam Thomas, Terrence Jones, still an NBA player, Julius Randle, Bam Adebayo, DeMarcus Cousins, AJ Ogilvy, two misses. So that's like 13 NBA players and like four of which are all stars. I think if I'm doing math right. Um, so it's like to be that physically imposing at that age, especially he's like younger than most of the people on this list. And his ATO is above average for this list also. Um, I think it's worth just seeing if that field continues to develop, you know. Um, Certainly you can tell a huge difference between EYBL tape. And EYBL, he was just like a wrecking ball. He was just like throwing the ball, get him downhill. there's so many transition leak outs that he just kind of relied upon. So he didn't really have to develop those like more intricate point guard skills. And so, I mean, he was way more of a shooting guard, and a lot of the time. So like, I'm I've over like this tape watch, I think going into it, I was like, I would just rather somebody else take that risk. But now I'm like, at least at the end of the lottery, I'm not, it sounds like he's gonna go like top 10 at this point, which I think is a little excessive. But I would not be surprised at all if he turns out to be like a top 5 player in the class, you know, just with his, if his handle and feel like passing continue to develop. Because like, there's a really good chance the shot hits on the outside, like his 3-point shot hits, just with the other indicators. Um, it's tough to bet on the finishing. I don't know. That's the one thing that I think even an upside scenario doesn't really work out is the rim finishing, but his floater is pretty like airtight. Um, yeah, I end of lottery, I would roll the dice for sure on fears.
Yeah, I definitely probably sounded a bit more skeptical in my last little comment there. I don't hate him at the end of the lottery. I think I'm skeptical of projecting him as this really, really surefire guard creator that's
Yeah.
in the same vein as, like a De'Aaron Fox type prospect. I think Sexton is an interesting comparison
Yeah.
uh, that had, obviously the crazy downhill speed that, although he's not um, like an all-star or anything, has played a long NBA career at this point and is going to continue to have more productive years ahead. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't hate him in that range. I do wonder if, just given how young he is and given how many skills there are there to develop, if it's like a second contract thing where he like really hits at some point later in his career, which I don't know. It's really hard to say, and I think it depends on the situation he ends up in. Is there any teams that are currently picking in the lottery, or honestly wherever, that you like have kind of circled for him as a spot that, like, oh, I would really love to see Fears go there?
Yeah. I mean, like Brooklyn's kind of the easy answer for anyone that you want to get creation reps, right? And it sounds like they might be interested too. As a semi Brooklyn Nets fan, I've kind of mixed feelings about that. But yeah, I think it's a lot of these situations, yeah, he'd be going into lower usage backup role, around where he would be picked, it seems like. I mean, unless like the Wizards took him at 6, right? It sounds like that's in play too. Um, yeah, any of these like blank slate young teams, I think just throw him into the deep end at this point. It seems like he like physically can handle it. So like see where that 3-point percentage like sorts out, right? Get him those passing reps. Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting to see on the Swish
How
board,
about you?
on the
Yeah. So,
sorry, did it was there some?
oh, there's a lag there. We're good. No.
All right, perfect. Um, yeah, the switchboard has Brooklyn as that, the fit listed, which, yeah, I think he'd get the creation reps, he'd be able to work out some of those kinks. So it'd be interesting to see him there if he ends up in a spot where he kind of gets to have the ball in his hands a lot, or if he more slowly is brought on. Um, I think given that he just has that experience, like he could kind of develop into a productive NBA player in either environment, in my opinion. Um, like I said, I do think there is a chance too where it's like really the second team where he hits, just given some of the holes and how young he is. But yeah, we'll see. Why don't we move on to Jase here, unless you have anything to add on Fears?
We're good. Yeah.
Perfect.
Start.
Um, yeah, so Jase, very different player Um, Michigan State, similarly, not super physically imposing. Actually, a little bit shorter than Fears is, measured in at 6 foot and a half without shoes, so he'll be under 6'2" in shoes, but has a 6'6" wingspan, same weight at around 178 pounds. Um, Very smooth lefty player. Um, and I think just the overarching thing with him is that he was just super productive and was just like a really good basketball player for Michigan State this year. Um, 10 BPM, 41.3% from three, in the 80s from the foul line, high assist to turnover rate at 2.3, 1.9 steal rate, 1.4% block rate. So, yeah, just kind of was very good for Michigan State. So, Matt, I think just with that sort of really elite statistical profile as a backdrop, I mean, you don't really see too many freshmen that have double digits BPM. Um, what was it that made Jase such a productive player this season, and how does that sort of project forward to the big leagues?
Yeah, I mean, he was a productive player because he didn't miss shots and didn't make any mistakes, basically, right? 62% true shooting, and 2.3 assist to turnover ratio. So like he just, I mean, he was super low usage compared to these other guys, only 19% usage, way more of an off-ball player. Where he's like just super savvy, moving off ball, knowing where to like fade into the 3-point line or like how to just like hide behind screens, even like cut toward like more in the dunker spot, here and there. Just like really smart. His like footwork technique and his balance, getting from spot to spot is just like so impressive. He can kind of like spot up turning in an instant, like without any issue. So like there are things that make you think, huh, maybe he can have that higher usage just because he's like so efficient. Um, he's really good at navigating small spaces in particular. That's like my favorite quality about him. Um, in the mid range in particular, he's just like really smart, like and really nimble cutting through traffic. Um, drew a decent number of fouls, like kind of was like a great finisher and the interior just kind of like not really flailing, but like he just like really smart at pivoting into the lane and just like um kind of drawing just enough contact or like just really smart at getting his feet close to the basket before taking off, like kind of the opposite of Fears. Um but yeah, and showed some like I mean, got a 1.4% block rate. It was not nothing for a 6 foot guard, you know. The steal rate was a little low. I mean, I guess it was like fine at 1.9%, but I guess a little lower than you'd want for like a lead guard. And I think the one big concern with him is his first step isn't great. So that's like kind of the thing that I worry about as far as keeping up that efficiency and that productivity in the NBA is like, is he going to be able to get open? You know, is he like quick enough? His like athletic scores in the combine were not fantastic. Like his sprints, his agility, his vert, none of them were really great. Um, and so like you don't really see he's amazing at playing with pace, which is why I'm still optimistic on the scoring, like working out in some way, but is a very valid question of like how high that ceiling, that usage ceiling can get um beyond what it was.
Yeah, I think he's very different from Fears, whereas Fears is really making his money as an on-ball player. You're not drafting Jeremiah Fears to be this like pure off-ball guard. I think Jase is sort of at his best playing away from the ball, moving into open space. I think he's just like a very good off-ball scorer, good spot-up shooter, really good just moving around like after the pass and just kind of finding that open spot on the perimeter in the mid range or even the dunker spot, as you mentioned. So it's even though they're kind of this similar size, they're of very different skill sets. I also enjoy just his ability to win in those sort of mid-range areas. I think that he's a pretty good off the dribble shooter, and I think he has that like side to side shake to him, even if he isn't super great with just like that raw first step athleticism. I think he does have enough handling juice to like create those like quick side step back type pull ups in inside the arc, and a little bit behind the line. But yeah, I think he's just severely limited by that inability to get downhill. I think whereas Fears, we talked about, having like almost three unassisted rim makes per 40 minutes. With Jase Richardson, he had 34 unassisted rim makes in 36 games. So significantly less. He's not someone that is really generating a lot of those self created paint touches, even against college athletes. So definitely puts a ceiling on what he can do as a creator. And I think when you look at a guy like this, I think it begs the question of, okay, if he's making his money as this really crafty, nifty, off ball, quick action type scorer, and he's 6'2". So I think just being 6'2", you're going to bleed a little bit of value on the defensive end. We can get more into the defense later, but how valuable is a player like that isn't giving you that crazy high usage, that is also sort of in his size bracket?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult question. I mean, I do think there's like a limited, I don't know. I struggle. I really go back and forth on Jace. Because I wrote this piece over last summer about like the biggest improvers and like in like recent NBA history, like a lot of players that were started out negative, and ended up being like all-stars. And like one major commonality of all of them is that they're really good navigating to small spaces, and they are able to like hit through those mid-range gaps, and they are able to like always get their shot off because of that. And like Jace is really good on t touch shots. I think his floater didn't go in as much as like Fears's did, but overall his touch seems like very strong. What was he on layup? He was, yeah, 93rd percentile on layups. He shot 69% on layups, which is super impressive. Um 64% in the half court, so like still strong. Um but yeah, I want to like I don't know what that 75th percentile outcome looks like. I think the defense, you have to kind of bet on, I think, some athletic development, because he is still pretty young too. I think he's also under 19, right?
Yeah, I think so. Or is
Yeah,
he?
18.7 right now.
Yeah, he is
Um,
18.7.
but yeah, so I I want to buy in, but I think even in that upside scenario, I don't think he's a good defender, you know? Um, I think he's like decent at keeping the shape of the defense, kind of the opposite of Fears, but there's a lot of like 50-50 balls like that, like for Fears would be easy steals, that like Jace just doesn't have the step to get to like really finish plays. And that's stuff that you can only improve so much. I mean, if he continues, he's still really skinny. It's like 180, under 180 pounds, I think.
Yeah,
So like, and like 6'6" wingspan you can work with. If he can add some weight, like get a little more like thrusts on his like lunges, um then I could see a pretty like solid outcome on both sides, because he doesn't need large spaces, to get that scoring done. And he's always been, I mean, even in like in high school, he was playing off the boozers, so he was also like super low usage there. But like he's really good in that role, and I think that makes him like super portable across like contexts too. Where I'm much more comfortable with his floor than Jeremiah Fears is for sure. Where I think you don't need to give him usage, and like what team wouldn't you want like a 60% true shooting, 19%, even if it's low usage, you don't like, I put Orlando as the best fit for him. It's just like playing off those like jumbo creators. There's a lot of them in the league. There's a lot of players you need to play off of, and Jace is someone who doesn't really make mistakes. He doesn't take too many risks as a passer. But he's still pretty like effective here and there. Like he's really good at like laying down the ball out of drives. His assist rate doubled when Jeremy Jeremiah's brother, Michigan State point guard, not a very good three-point shooter at all. He was like 13 for 38, I think, from three for the season as their starting point guard. So when he went off the floor, Jace's assist rate went up to 18%. A much like healthier figure, if still not like great for like a point guard. But as like an off-ball guard who's gonna just like make quick decisions and like moves the ball long. But I haven't mentioned like another big concern is that like he's super left dominant. He's like extremely left dominant. Um, he like um I don't know. He like kind of refuses to go. I don't know. I don't know the limitations of his right hand because he uses it that infrequently. Um, so that makes me a little nervous as far as projecting that like he needs to develop his handle also is not like a great question to throw into the mix for somebody who also has creation concerns. I mean like burst concerns. So like you need to improve the burst and the handle at the same time is kind of a difficult question, even if he is still providing all this off-ball value. So there is a limitation to the ceiling, but seems like a very portable player with a decent floor, I think.
Yeah, the passing is interesting to me. I think I was overall impressed projecting him in this off-ball role. I think his feel for just making those quick decisions is really snappy. Um, and like even if he isn't super bursty, there is some like closeout creation stuff where he's good attacking off the catch and hitting those dump down passes. Um, and I think with his wingspan, it gives him access to some of those like difficult angles. Like he's able to kind of like make these sort of extension passes. And it gives him access to like a pretty diverse range of windows while he's making those sort of secondary reads. But yeah, it's not like he's this high usage pick and roll guy where you see him, um, moving defenders around with his eyes or just like making the pick and roll reads. Um, and yeah, I think he definitely doesn't have that it's right hand game down. It's just like another limitation to his creation ability. I'm going to bring up a name here, and I think they're different players because I think the guy I'm going to bring up was significantly better as a shooter. I just think he had a quicker stroke, honestly. Not that Jase is Jase is still a very good shooter, but I think this is a guy who was elite in college and is elite in the NBA now after his rookie season. But I think he's kind of an informative data point for me here, and that's Jared McCain. I'm
Hmm.
wondering if you see any similarities there because I remember when I was evaluating McCain, he was someone I did end up being high on just because I was in love with his shooting and off ball game. But I think my hesitation with him was okay, he's this 6'3" in shoes guard that doesn't get to the rim at all. McCain only had 41 unassisted rim makes in 36 games. So seven more than Jase even. Um, but it was like, okay, he's this just like super limited downhill creator that's 6'2", 6'3". Like he doesn't create any sort of advantages and bend the defense in that way. But McCain has, small sample size because he got injured this season, but had quite a good rookie season just off being like a really potent off ball player, making the right plays, knocking down open shots, getting to those quick little pull ups. I think he's kind of an informative data point for me that just like gives me a little bit more optimism on Chase potentially figuring out a way to make it work. Again, probably not the best data point to use just because I do think McCain level above as like a just elite shot prep guy that got up like 11 3-point attempts per 100 at Duke, and just hasn't been in the NBA that long. But I do think there's a world where Jase can sort of do similar things.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's I'm not sure about like I mean McCain. I'd say McCain is like like a quicker player, I would say, than Jace, like getting downhill. So even though like neither are great like down here creators, I think McCain still has an edge there, and McCain's also just like very strong and good in keeping his like man on him, like on his hip compared to Jace. When Jace is just like ways, I mean, is like way more lanky, I guess. But yeah, I mean, McCain's just like such a nuclear shooter. I still have like my hangups with McCain. I was like obviously way too low on him, but I still think the defense is gonna be like a major anchor. I think Jace will be a better defender than him.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm still worried about McCain being able to handle ball pressure, which is also a concern for Jace. Um, I think it was Ben Pfeiffer that was like hand tracking for passing, and like Jace's like mistake rate when he's like rushed was like really bad. Um, so that's something that definitely is like a ceiling limiter, I think, for Jace, and that how is he gonna if even if he is this like killer off ball scorer, how does he handle like more pressure? Is he gonna like if he doesn't have that manipulative passing, if he isn't like doesn't have that versatile handle, like how is he going to escape these like difficult situations to like take advantage of his gravity, you know? Or is he just gonna be like we just like needed to block him off? I mean, there's a lot of times where he couldn't even like get the ball when I was watching, right? Like when I was watching versus Auburn, obviously very tough, but like NBA level defense in a lot of ways. But like they had like a lot of times, unless like he has a perfect screen set to like for him to run behind, it's really tough for him to get the ball. So I don't know if he's gonna be like running those ISOs or anything, right? Even if things work out. So I definitely don't see McCain style upside on offense, I think. Um, but yeah, I think some similar issues in some way, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair. And I do think McCain is just a step up as a shot maker. I think that's just the big
Yeah.
distinction. But um, yeah, I don't know. I do think that there is a way for these like 6'2", just like really um, like potent decision makers to kind of find a way to make it work on that end. Um, yeah, defensively, I think we're on the same page. Like you're just going to be limited by that size a little bit. I think he's pretty sharp rotationally. Just like puts himself in the right positions and makes the right rotations a lot of the times, but doesn't have that like top tier athleticism to just wreak havoc on that end. Although like his block rate was pretty high. I think a lot of that's just like a testament to his length and just ability to kind of put himself in the right spot. So I honestly think that um, there are more paths to him being like survivable on that end than fears, just because I think he's just seen more on tape. I think he's a lot sharper rotationally and just kind of puts himself in better positions. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can move on to Yakuchonis too. I don't know if you have any more things to add on Jace.
Where do you like land on him then, like putting it all together, like compared to like fears?
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering if I should save it for the end
Oh, for the
to
end.
rank all
Okay, you
three,
can
but
reveal all of them.
yeah, why don't we wait till the end to
Okay,
just
sure.
reveal all three? So
Okay, we can move on then.
we'll move to Yakuchonis here. Um, so yeah, 6'6", 205, 6'8" wingspan. Played at Illinois this season. Almost think he's kind of in the middle of both of these guys, whereas Fears, this crazy downhill guy, um, and Jase kind of just crazy not downhill guy. I think Jakucionis is kind of in the middle of that. At the same time, he's definitely more like high usage leaning as far as his college role. 25.6% usage rate, scored 15 a game. Like he was the guy kind of running the show on that Illinois team. And there was like a lot of moments on film with him where he just looks the part of being that great creator, with the ability to hit step backs, make the right pick and roll reads, hit off the dribble shots. Like as far as his 3-point percentage goes, it's not like he was a great three-point shooter, 31.8% this season, but only 37% of those were assisted, which is like crazy. 63% of his 3-point makes this year as a guy who just turned 19 a few months ago, playing high level of college basketball, running the show. 63% of his threes were unassisted off the dribble. And he shot 84.5% from the foul line. So there's definitely outcomes with him where he's like a very, very good shooter potentially. And like I said, I think if you look at like his highs on offense, they're like exceptionally high. 6'6" guy that can get to those off the dribble threes, hit difficult shots, get downhill a little bit too. So yeah, I think the highs with him on offense are definitely high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're talking about these three players because they're all ones that I've been like very all over the map for. I like my initial like instinct watching Casp was like this guy has like the magic, right? Like he has like very some instantaneous reads like through traffic that very few people have access to, while also being like a physical pull-up shooter, right? Like that combination of things is just like extremely valuable in combination. If you have to like be honest, and like can't go under and stuff like that, and then like but then the more I watched, the more I became concerned with his handle, to like a pretty severe degree, I would say. Where he just like he doesn't protect the ball. He dribbles high, but I think worst of all, he dribbles like kind of back a little bit, where it just like almost comes out of his hand a little bit. So he's like pretty easy to strip. He had like some just like really careless turnovers. I think the decision making negates a lot of the passing skill a lot of the time. I mean, he still only had a 1.3 assist to turnover ratio, despite I think being in like a pretty accommodating system for him. Um, but I mean, he ran a ton of pick and roll. Um, Turned it over, I think, a decent amount within that pick and roll. But and then my final, like watching this go around, you start to like appreciate all the little things he does a lot more. He's like he has some like Pods-esque qualities where he's like really good at hunting down offensive rebounds. He's pretty tough, like getting into the lane and drawing fouls. He like I buy if he's getting downhill, if they like I don't buy his handle creating advantages like at all really. I'm like really pessimistic on that, but I am optimistic on him. If he's catching the ball going downhill and has a seam, he's really good at keeping that. And like finding a finishing angle and a lot of times drawing a foul with that. So I think Illinois kind of gave an interesting blueprint. Um, I am also like he's so reliant on his left step back. He like I think that's gonna be like super predictable early in his career where like college teams just didn't really adjust to that. Um, but it's like he loves the left pullback. His shot is like I think a little too slow and low for my liking, which I think is gonna cut into his pull. I mean, that's why he has to create so much room on his pull-ups. I mean, he does. It's good that he's able to like get a lot of space on step backs. Um, but he didn't have much of a mid-range like pull-up game. He didn't have much of a, like a catch and shoot game. Um, I think it just like it takes him like it's a little slow loading and again like just a low release. Um, Here I thought I have like a pull-up. left versus right. But anyways, yeah. So I definitely have my like my major red flags with him that I think are going to be stickier. I think the handle is like the most significant flaw of these three prospects that I'm concerned about. Maybe that and Fears' rim finishing are like tied. Um, but I have like I think he's like an okay defender too. Like he's pretty big, which is nice, but he's just kind of like heavy-footed in general a lot of the time. But he has a motor, like he plays really hard. Um, the 3-point percentage is probably gonna be decent just with like he's like a hell of a he's a really good free throw shooter, but I did notice when he shoots his like free throws, he like rocks it in his hand a little bit, like when he like goes up, which I think is like part of why it makes it like a little slower for him in the pull-ups. Or like he needs that like natural rhythm to like pull up into it compared to just like catch and shoot. You don't get to like rock the ball like that. You're just like straight like moving it and like takes a second to like reset like that. So I do think he can be a nuclear pull-up shooter, but the catch and shoot might take a little longer. Even if he's like a great overall shooter, there's been like plenty of times where players have been great pull-up shooters and just the catch and shoot never came along. Um, but yeah, overall, I definitely got higher on him this watch, despite these like major red flags, because I do think there's a lot of ways he'll contribute on the basketball court. So
Yeah, no, it's an interesting comment about the mechanics as far as what you notice with his free throws. I think I can struggle sometimes to diagnose like exactly what the issues are with one's mechanics, but I think like my biggest concern is like, yeah, he just doesn't really take a lot of catch and shoot threes. Um, and then that conjoined with the fact that I'm on the same page. I'm very low on his handle. I just don't think he has what it takes to just give him the ball and let him rock. I just think teams are gonna blitz him. I think against pressure, I think you stick a smaller ball handler on him that can just like get up under him, and he's gonna turn the ball over a lot. I mean, 25% turnover rate is just really really bad, and I think it's one thing if he's making all kinds of like crazy passes and just trying tons of stuff on offense. And I think there is some good passing craft there. I think overall, like he can make the pick and roll reads that you want to see. He can make some of those skip passes, hit the roller. Like there's moments of like good pace and patience coming off a ball screen. But um, yeah, I don't think the turnovers is him just like trying crazy stuff on offense. I think it's a combination of just kind of the sloppy mistakes, but more concerning is a lot of them are handle related turnovers where he's just getting the ball stripped from him. So yeah, I do have a lot of pause for him in that like big time creation role. Off the ball, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. And I think it'll alluding to what you brought up about some of the little things. I just think his wherewithal for knowing where to be on offense without the ball in his hands is honestly really good, even if he isn't like a great off ball shooter or anything like that yet. And I don't think he's at the level of someone like Jase in that regard either. But I think for someone that is a high usage pick and roll guy, sometimes you see them guys like that kind of just standing around, not really knowing how to play off ball. But I think Jakucionis kind of has this natural feel for just like drifting into space and like relocating along the perimeter and coming to the rim, things like that are just really encouraging for the long term projection. Like if he had the sort of loosey goosey handle and then wasn't doing some of those little off ball things on offense, I would be quite low on him. But I think there's some encouraging moments as an off ball player. I think his touch is good. I think, you're hopefully banking on that catch and shoot game sort of evolving. And then, yeah, I mean, there is the fact that he's 6'6", like he's not, um, even if he's not like a crazy athlete or anything, like very low events creation guy on that end of the floor. Um, I think there's just a little bit more versatility there, just being a 6'6", 205-pound guy with a 6'8" wingspan. It's not like he has crazy measurements, but it's bigger than like your standard like point guard or shooting guard. So yeah, I don't know. He's a really tough eval for me. And honestly, I think amongst all the players that I've watched or talked about on this podcast, he might be one of the most challenging in the class because the the like highlights with him, as you kind of mentioned on your first impression, it's like, yeah, this guy has it. Like he's got that step back game, he's got that high level pick and roll creation, pick and roll feel. But um, yeah, there's just some concerns there with the handle I have that I think are going to prevent him from hitting those super high marks.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to look up the stats. Synergy tracks like pull-ups driving left versus driving right. He was 9 for 24 driving left pull-up threes, so like 38%, really good. But he's only 1 for 5 driving right pull-up threes. So 5 times as frequent pulling up to the left compared to the right, and like nearly twice as efficient. So that's gonna be just like thing taken away immediately from him, right? Like no one's gonna. But also, if you take away the left step back, that makes the right handle concerns like a lot less concerning, right? If the shot is that nuclear, again, like anchoring to 75th percentile outcomes, that three is gonna hit, that's gonna meet the free throw percentage. And I like, yeah, the handle is just like it's really one of the more inconvenient like facts of this class is that like he has issues securing the ball. But oh yeah, also as another example of his like kind of questionable decision making, I saw him in this one game I was watching. He tried to throw an alley-oop to Kylan Boswell, like like a contested alley-oop, like to
Oh
this guy
man.
who has zero dunks all season and just like I don't know. So like he just kind of like goes for stuff every now and then. Um but yeah, but the like he has some nuclear stuff, right? He has some nuclear shooting potential and passing potential that's hard to ignore. Just turned 19, good, like 19, like young, good size, pretty productive, plays hard, has some skill development to go. It's not in like the most unusual story, right? They have been high turnover players that have like translated like your Cade Cunninghams and like Trey Young, but those turnovers still limit them in some way, right? That like they're still holding back their upside to some degree. Um, and if Jakucionis isn't that level of shooter, the floor I think is pretty low with him. Because there's a chance he's picked on defense. And if the shot doesn't like hit, if it like I think last year too, he was like 29% from three playing the Adidas Next Generation tournament or something like that. He was like 90% from free throw line. And I think under 30% from three. So we've had that kind of like steady divergence between his free throw percentage and his 3-point percentage. So there is some like downside risk for the three just being like okay. At which point you just kind of live with giving him that to some degree. And like can take then you can like really pluck his handle and focus on limiting him that way. So yeah, but the upside is still like really appealing. So it's another all three of these guys like pretty tricky evals, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the lack of like I think the shot is really the big thing here. If you're not projecting it to be this, phenomenal on ball high usage creator type. Um, and yeah, I mean, they're like someone like Killian Hayes was like 80s free throw shooter. Um, had some
Yeah.
great moments shooting off the dribble and just like could not shoot off the catch. Didn't work in the NBA. I'm not saying he's going to be Killian Hayes, but yeah, I think you there is some of that downside there with him where yeah, if he isn't like if he's like the third, but still like low 30s 3-point shooter, turning the ball over a lot on offense, um, and isn't providing you any sort of defensive value as well. Like the floor is quite low for him. But um, yeah, I do want to at least mention too, because I don't think we totally hit on this. I think it's mitigated a bit by just that lack of like dynamic handling. But I do think like with the screen, he is pretty good creating downhill and he shot 67% at the rim. Like good absorbing contact. Um, like has the physicality to finish through people and can contort a little bit to finish at challenging angles. Not a super high vertical guy, but and yeah, it's just still like limited by some of the strength stuff, just being a young player. But I do think there is like some promise for his downhill creation game, but I think it's just going to be more so as like a secondary, tertiary type guy rather than like the super dynamic lead guard type role.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's a pretty appealing off. I mean, yeah, I think Avinash brought up that same like Killian Hayes comparison to me. Um, but like, yeah, that's the floor is scary for sure. But his craft is really solid, like you said. Like his when he gets downhill, when he has that advantage, he can do some interesting stuff. And like he's a pretty like good finisher, draws a lot of fouls and makes those free throws. So there might be some floor there if a team is able to, or maybe you can raise his floor just by like getting him in those like advantageous situations, and then like building out from that way. I think if he comes into a situation where like you're going to be the lead guard and like take over, that would be a huge problem. Kind of like the opposite of fears. I don't want him taking like a ton of reps. As like I want to kind of ease him into like the turnovers could be a really big issue from year one to the point of like almost like a quarterback getting their confidence shaken if you're just like getting hit over and over again. If you're getting your pocket picked over and over again, that's not going to be like great for your development. So I'm not sure where like the best fit for him would be, but um, I don't know, maybe someone like Portland playing, he could play off ball more.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I'm not
Portland's an
sure.
interesting one. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, like I guess there's Toronto like has some ball handlers of like varying goodness, but I don't think there's like a really ideal spot for him. I
Yeah.
guess Atlanta they've got um yeah, I don't know. It's
It's
tough.
kind of a concerning thing that it's like tough to find a spot that
Yeah.
is a great fit. Um, Again, compared to like Jace, where I like, oh yeah, throw him on any team, he'll have really high efficient, like 15%, 15 to 20% usage. Um, he's kind of in between Fears and Jace, where like you want to see what's there a little bit and you want to push him to like try stuff and pick and roll still. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's interesting. I just checked out the Swish best fits and it's Brooklyn and Toronto. So um yeah, I don't know. I think it's curious with him because I think again the highs are really high. There's tons of enticing skills here, but I would say he has the lowest floor of the three guys that we talked about today
Yeah,
by
for sure.
a decent amount. Even Fears, who um, I think I have my good bit of skepticism of like he's his floor isn't at the level of Jakucionis just on account of him being able to get downhill really consistently, and just kind of like generate those advantages. But Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. So, Matt, I'm curious how you would rank these three players, kind of sticking with the theme of the show of ranking the guys we talk about at the end.
Yeah, I've been like as we've been talking, I've been like moving them up and down. So, like it's been like hard, but in general, I would say all three have been consistently in my like 8 to 20 range, like a pretty wide range of like outcomes, I think. Like that's kind of where I'd feel comfortable with all three taking them. I think all three have like similar offensive upside if they hit. And all three have like kind of similar defensive limitations while like still getting there's still a chance for all three to be like around neutral defenders if like things really hit the right way. Um, but yeah, I have pretty similar to the switchboard. I have them like nearly in a line there. I have Jace at 14, Fears at 15, and Casp at 17. So I would say just like philosophically this draft, I'm way more interested in like the cheaper guard bets later on, where you have like guys like Javon Small, Ben Suraf, even like Nolan Traore, I think has become like underrated at this point. Um, Cam Jones, like those are guys that you can get like much later that still provide some on-ball equity. That's why I think don't have those guys in like my second tier. They're in that like third start tier. It starts to like 13, you know. Um, but they all could hit. Like all three, I think are pretty interesting. I think they all have like interesting ceilings and pretty steep floors. So I really understand ranking them a wide range, but I don't think I would want to like put a significant amount of draft equity into drafting any of the three, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I um I agree. I think I'm kind of wary of all of them, but I think in that 8 to 20 range, as you mentioned, it's very fair. I still need to dive into those international guards a little bit more to see exactly where they stack up. I've seen clips of them, but I haven't really like done my full deep dive yet. But yeah, someone like Cam Jones, like I'm very high on, and I don't think there's like a huge gap between him and these three guys we talked about. Um, but yeah, I think I would lean towards Jase just because I think at the end of the day, he just has those skills that can fit pretty seamlessly into a lot of NBA offenses. I think that the off ball ability is just phenomenal, and I think with Jakucionis, right? Like I'm not expecting even him to be. I'm expecting him to have more on ball utility than Jase, unquestionably, but I think I'm expecting him to scale down. And if you're expecting him to scale down, then I think you may as well go with the guy that is just more polished as an
Yeah.
off-ball player. Anyways, is you already know he can shoot off the catch. You already know he's great attacking closeouts. Um, so I think I would lean towards Jase being my top guy amongst these three. Um, usually I've gone into these episodes with like a total idea of my ranking, but I think I've kind of been flipping Fears and Yakuchonis in my head
Yeah.
a little bit throughout this episode. Um, they'll probably end up being back to back ish, like towards the end of the lottery type range for
Yeah.
me. I think I lean Yakuchonis a little bit just because of those like super high moments on offense and some of those little things that he's able to do off the ball. I don't think the gap is like particularly large, but I think I do have real concerns about um, Fears is just overall offense. I think I'm just a little bit lower on the offensive feel. I think that's going to take some time to develop. I worry about the finishing. I don't think even if he has good touch, I don't think he's going to like shoot it right away. So um, yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of gaps there, but I think it's tough because the reward with him is definitely like reasonably high if the whole package comes together. But um, it's tough. I don't think there's like a huge gap between these guys, but I'd give this slight edge to Casp.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely think it's close. I mean I like I had Casp on like my do not draft list basically after like just like watching him get his handle picked like a few times in a row at some point, you know. But there he is like a utility guy. You kind of have to view him as like a utility guy who can like pull up a lot just with his like good size for that level of shooter, you know. He needs to be like a scrappy player who gets offensive rebounds and like loose balls and stuff like that. I think that's like and like dives to the rim hard, you know, and stuff like that. Just making the most he can off ball when he scales down on ball. So I mean, it does seem like even with the decision-making concerns, he does have like a good feel for where to be. I think you mentioned that earlier. So like, um, yeah, I can't quit him entirely. I have come back around, so I'm in the top 20 at least. Yeah,
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I don't know. The just turning the ball over a lot when getting pressured is always just like a bad sign. And
yeah,
um, I don't know.
yeah, it-
I do think there's enough good stuff there where it's like, all right, I still have some optimism.
yeah. I will say I am like I have become just like very high on this class in general, especially in this range. Um, like I think the 8 to 24 range is like really, really strong. So I even though I have these guys like 14 through 17, I still see like starter outcomes for them, I should say.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I've enjoyed.
Starter potential.
I've definitely
Yeah.
enjoyed this class so far. I mean, I think I've talked about enough players on the pod. I think by the second one, I was um, still like kind of ranking everyone as I was talking to like, I can't even, I think I've talked about like 12, 13 guys at this point. So I can't rake them all off the top of my head. But I still am banging the table for Cedric Coward here. I mean, I think he's um, amongst all the guys that I've talked about, like he's honestly right up there for me. So yeah, it's getting to the
Yeah.
point where I've watched a lot of these top guys, and he's right up in there with them.
He's
So
your gem so far. Yeah, I have. Yeah, especially after listening to your podcast, have gotten higher on Coward. I have him at the top of the same tier with all these guys at like number 13. So yeah, very interesting player for sure.
yeah,
My favorite Cedric Coward stat is he has the highest finishing rate for like and ones or for like shooting fouls. He finishes like he makes like half of his shooting fouls, or at least this was like his junior year at Eastern Washington. A lot of that was like through post ups or he's just like closer to the basket. But I just thought that's like his touch is just like unreal. Um, I yeah, also handle concerns, never drives the ball. But yeah, Coward's a cool player.
yeah. I mean, we'll see, and I'm excited to do a couple more of these episodes before the draft. Get my final board out.
Mhm.
But yeah, Matt, unless you have anything to add, I think we can wrap up here. And feel free to take a second to plug anything that you have coming up with Swish or anything else.
Yeah, we're gonna have the second iteration of our big board guide coming out sometime before the draft. So just keep an eye out for that. Where we're gonna have more in-depth profiles for every player, which will be fun. But yeah, go check out the swishtheory.com for our board that we have up there right now. It's got some good stuff. Yeah, and you can find me at DraftPal on Twitter as well. But yeah, thanks so much for having me, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, seriously, go check out the board on the website if you haven't already. I mean, if you've made it to this point in the show, I'm sure you have, but if not, you will be all over the board. So yeah, Matt, thanks for coming on. And we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks so much.